Welcome, pilots. My name is Hybrid B, and boy, we have a lot to cover when it comes to 323. And because there's a lot to cover, there's going to be timestamps down below if you want to get to a specific topic you want to hear more about my opinion. As always, a disclaimer, I am Evocati. I'm giving you my thoughts and opinions on the Evocati playtest that happened over the weekend and some of the subsequent actual builds that happened throughout the past few weeks as well, too. And of course, as always, I'm not allowed to show you any of that footage, no media whatsoever. I can only talk about it. So if you want to just put me on in the background and just play it like a podcast or whatever, that works well enough, as most of the footage going to be on screen is just going to be generic B-roll footage or stuff I've taken straight from CIG. But without further ado, let's actually dive into this patch because it is massive. And I'm not kidding when I say it's massive, all right? I'm looking at my notes here. It's roughly about 4 pages of about 1,000 words altogether. And that's all just my feedback, my notes on everything I saw in the build, but I'm going to be distilling everything down into just the key areas this patch is focused on, as well as some interesting stuff that I saw as well that were not really talked about as much, just generally within the community and stuff CIG hasn't actually mentioned yet, though we're kind of in the patch notes, but we're buried a little bit. So anyway, how have things been progressing? Well, for the most part, actually, 3.23 has been a little bit struggling here and there to try to get itself some legs. Its stability has been the biggest issue, and indeed, the last few playtests we have done were only 4-hour-long playtests because stability was the main focus. There was tons of server crashes and just server boot loops going on, so it wasn't really a solid experience we could really sink our teeth into and really get through it. However, over the weekend, they got it a little bit more stabilized, and they gave us a long 2-day play period from Friday to Saturday, and then they shut it off on Sunday. Thanks to CIG for being able to get that out there, because I know it is holidays in the States, so we're having Easter Sunday. As you're watching this, of course, this is out past, but CIG is off until Tuesday, and then so they just released a build. They got all the issues, they got sorted, and then they continue to fix a little bit here and there, even on Friday when they're technically supposed to be off. So, I mean, big shouts out to them for taking the time to at least get it to us so we can get some feedback, actually sink our teeth into some mechanics, and then they can pour over the data on Tuesday. So, how did the playtests actually go? What were the interesting takeaways? Well, first, let's talk about the first big issue coming in here, or I should say big feature, which is the character creator. Now, not everybody's interested in the character creator, but I am. I quite enjoyed it. I don't really care about creating characters in Star Citizen in the past, mostly because our character creator is not really the greatest. You can do cool blend shapes and make some interesting stuff, but you can't really get into it. It isn't until you play more recent RPGs that you really have an appreciation for a good character creator. Baldur's Gate 3 is an example of a really excellent character creator. And despite all that, CIG has really stepped their game up here and made such an awesome feature. You can create really detailed characters far beyond anything we have right now currently in game, down to things like individual skin complexions, tones, makeup, hair dyes, and even beards. You can throw it on any gender you want. You can create whatever character you want, so it's really awesome. The main thing that you can do with it is you can blend facial shapes, so they have a bunch of different like facial captured heads and stuff like that, and you can blend individual parts. You can kind of like drag the individual vertices and pull them around to get kind of roughly the shape that you want. And then of course you can just do the normal blending method if you prefer that way as well too. It takes a little while to get used to. It's not something like, it's not exactly as intuitive as the one we're used to, but then again, the one we're used to now is you're just switching sliders back and forth. There's a lot more minute granularity built into this one, a little bit more. I did find that grabbing the individual vertices, like for example, grabbing the eye and trying to get the shape that you want, was not as intuitive. And I think it's because it doesn't have as many facial shapes as you would like. They said they added a lot of head scans into this one, which obviously they did. You can see there's quite a lot more in there. But it feels like sometimes like when you're trying to get a specific shape of the eye, it still feels like there's just missing data there. So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot more put in. Of course, they want to scan more heads and whatnot and add them to the game. But currently right now with what we have, I think when you're trying to grab the individual vertices and trying to change them around, it's not as much as I'd like. I found more success doing the blend option, going into the different types of heads, finding a head that I like, and then blending that head's individual like eye or nose or mouth shape. I found that to be far more intuitive than the vertices. And I think, of course, the reason why the vertice pulling stuff is it's just not as intuitive is because it just doesn't have as many heads as I would like personally to give the shape that I'm trying to. If I want to pull the eye to make it bigger or the mouth to make it bigger, but then I pull it to a certain direction and I'm like, I'm trying to make it bigger, but I can't. And that's because we don't have enough facial data to make that happen. So yeah, the vertice stuff doesn't really work for me, but I do like the blending in because I feel like I got a lot more of what I was looking for there, if that makes sense. It's hard to describe without actually showing you, but hopefully this will be going wave 1 and 2 or so on and so forth later, so you all have a better opportunity to see it. And of course I can always show you if you don't have those waves under your belt, I can show you what it actually looks like. But yeah, so I think role players and machinists are really going to enjoy this. If you're a person that really takes pride in building a real character that you like, I think you're going to enjoy this as well, because what the cool thing you're going to be able to do is you can save the preset for your character and then you can import it. And in my testing through different builds of 3.23, I was able to create a character, save that, and then import it through individual builds, even though the character creator was slowly changing over time and having features fixed and adjusted. So this looks like it is going to be compatible going forward, hopefully, so you won't lose your character data when you're trying to save a character that you really like and then you want to import it. So this is going to be nice when we eventually have, of course, wipes. If you have a character that you really like and you want it to be your character, you can save that, and then if we have a wipe and you have to recreate your character again for a new patch, you can just load that character so long as you haven't, I guess, deleted anything. I do hope that they decide to make that like a cloud feature that you can save. I wouldn't want it to be stored on the client's local drive. I mean, it would be nice, ideal if you can have both, right? You can have it stored locally and stored cloud. Don't know if CIG plans on doing that going forward, but it would be really nice so that way I could have it, for example, tied to my account, different characters. It's going to be important also, right? Because in the future with Death of a Spaceman, if you lose your character, right, the next of kin or significant other or whatever is going to take over for your character. And you may have that character saved as a preset. Maybe you designed that character in the past and you want to save them, but you know, who knows how long it's going to be until Death of a Spaceman gets to that point. It would be nice if we had it saved in the cloud to our account so we can retrieve it later, when this inevitably comes in and we want to pull it up whenever we want. That'd be really nice. All right, let's move on to the next topic here, which is going to be about the Visor and Lens rework. And what that really means is just a much more better designed and cleaner UI than live. It has a lot more user information available to you, including the brand new mini-map, which is really awesome. Now, there's some small bugs here and there with the design, especially with the chat window, but it's all really polished and just stuff that needs to be finished integrated into the actual live environment before it actually gets into your all's hands. Because again, it's coming from Squadron 42, and then they have to integrate it into the persistent universe, so it's a multiplayer environment, so it has to just kind of play well with everything. So the small bugs and glitches here are all just polish issues that need to be addressed. My current favorite is the notification system. It's a lot less intrusive and also quiet. It has no more notification sound. Now, I don't know if that's actually intentional. It could be that CIG wants to actually put sounds for notifications. They're just not in yet. But I do like how it is now. It's just a nice, quiet little banner that goes on the top, doesn't make any noise, and then other types of notifications that are just not important, like, for example, I don't know, armistice notifications and whatnot like that. They go on to the right side, and they're just out of the way, especially like the commodity price alerts and stuff like that. They all go onto the right side, so they're no longer intrusive. Now, issues I did personally run into with this UI is I run a 4K 16:9, just a regular standard display, but it's 4K. And I noticed that the UI elements are actually quite large despite it being on a 4K display. I normally like my UI elements being small if I can help it, except for HUDs on ships. But for HUDs on helmets, I would prefer them to be much smaller. And in the current iteration that I played, the elements were a little bit too large for my own personal taste. They kind of felt like they were just kind of crowding the edges of the corners of my screen. And yeah, I just was not a fan of it. I just didn't like it. I do hope they give us the option to kind of dynamically resize it. After all, it is building blocks, and theoretically building blocks gives us a lot more to work with in terms of customization options, right? CIG have told us in the past that, with building blocks, it's going to give us more options to not only give the developers and designers more options to customize the UI, but also give players some control at some point too when that all gets finalized. So we're going to be able to have more tweaks we can do there. So hopefully they can give us the option to resize the UI, because that would be super, super awesome. I also did notice from my fellow avocados that had ultra wides, there were some issues where the UI was stuck in the center of the screen, where it was a lot more centralized. It did not look very good. Luckily, CIG added a feature slider in the options where you can adjust the position of the HUD elements, so they can either be closer to the center if that's something you'd like, or they can be much further away towards the edges, which is going to be really handy for my ultra wide fellow flyers out there. So that is really, really nice. I'm glad they're adding that. I would like to see a lot more customizable features though, CIG, so if you can add more, please, it'd be really nice. More issues I saw here and there was, for example, the new dynamic crosshair for FPS, which was really, really cool. I really liked it. It's really awesome, but it was really large. It felt like really oversized, like comically oversized. So I'm wondering if that's either not intended, a bug, or it's just something that they're going to give us the ability to customize in the future. Because again, me personally, I'm used to just never playing with crosshairs. I play a lot of tactical shooters, but if there is going to be a crosshair and I, ideally probably want to use one, I'd probably try to make it small and less intrusive. If I'm playing a game like Battlefield or whatever, I generally try to keep the crosshair intrusive, but also still visible. Currently, I could not see an option to color the crosshair or change anything with that. So I do hope that changes. Not only was the crosshair kind of comically large, but the hit markers were also kind of comically large as well too. So when you shoot, you hit the player, you get the hit markers, and then when you kill a player, it also flashes red to let you know that you killed them. It does make combat feel a little bit more arcadey. I mean, we already have hit markers in game now, currently, and they're kind of really small and they're out of the way and not really too big of a deal. But these ones are just in your face and just huge. Like I felt like I was like a senior citizen playing the game with accessibility options turned on. And no shade thrown on people who have visual issues. We have people in our org as well who also have visual issues when it comes to seeing the UI, and by default this will be perfect for that, because those people who have eyesight issues will be able to easily see any of the UI elements. It's very easy for them, but I would like having the option to dial it back for myself, because I prefer a smaller UI. I prefer a less intrusive UI, especially with crosshairs and stuff like that. So hopefully they can adjust that. But yeah, the crosshairs can be turned off. I don't know why you would want to ever turn it off. I mean, they're giving us the option, sure, but like there's no point. Like, just leave it on. In the future, of course, it's going to be that if you have like a civilian style helmet, it won't have a crosshair. If you have like a military helmet, like a Marine helmet or something like that, that will give you a functional crosshair. And that's well and good. I just don't understand why, why would you give us the option to turn it off then? Like, I don't know. I guess some people may just want to have the military helmet but not have the crosshair, I guess. I don't know. But hey, options are always good anyway, so I'm not going to bash them for adding it. It just seems kind of weird, but hey, it works. So let's see. The holographic effects on the UI. So my notes in here, I noted that the UI effects probably are going to turn some people off. The floaty kind of like holographic shader design that CAG has been trying to go for, I think it looks cool. I personally like it. Functionality wise, it leaves a little bit to be desired. There's kind of like these little ghosting effects and stuff. And through patch over patch, they kind of addressed that, added some better drop shadowing and improved it. But it still, I think, is probably going to rub some people the wrong way. Overall, I think it's personally usable. I didn't really find too much else about it. The main concern for me was the size of the elements and me being unable to resize them. I would like them to be smaller. But I'm just putting it out there. You probably might be one of those people out there who probably may not like this. But hey, they need more feedback and polish, so hopefully when it goes to wave 1 and 2 and so on and so forth, you guys will be able to provide additional feedback there and get them to give us some more of those elements. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully they will allow us to customize the UI to taste a bit more. Now, on the subject of the minimap, I actually quite enjoyed it. The minimap is surprisingly functional, but despite it being functional and being really nice and really pretty, I hardly ever noticed myself using it. Mostly because I know all the landing locations by heart, for example. Like if you're a newer player or you just don't remember landing locations by heart, you probably don't really, you're probably going to see a lot more use out of this because it's just easier to navigate the spaces. It's very well easily laid out. It's really nice looking and it's just easy to identify where things are. But for me personally, I just never used it because I know all the landing locations by heart. It's really, I know how to navigate all my ships by heart. It didn't really matter to me. The main issues I saw with it, however, is that it suffers from a lot of visibility issues. So some lighting conditions, it can be hard to actually see the minimap because, for example, if it's really bright out, you can't see anything. If whatever you're looking at is already bright, it can be hard to see the minimap. It just gets washed out. Also, currently, the FPS radar is not kind of fully functional with it, as well as the custom GPS marker guidance system is not available as well, too. So when you're trying to do a quest or something like that, it doesn't show anything on the HUD or minimap currently. Not every location also has proper minimaps. I did a bunch of bunkers and stuff like that, and none of the bunkers had minimaps. They just said radar unavailable. Some areas, for example, if you're just out in the wild, they don't have minimaps either. Not yet. I'm assuming that's coming in later. Hopefully, maybe by the time it goes live. I don't know. We'll see. But currently, that's kind of the main issues I saw. The big positive I saw with the new UI, the new Visor update, was the compass and angle degree markers. Yes, FPS players rejoice, we finally have a functional compass. Although currently it does not have cardinal directions. It just have bearing markers, which, okay, I can deal with it. I would prefer to have cardinal directions if we can. I mean, they're planets and moons. If you're on a planet and moon, I'm assuming you'd have some polar direction you could use as a quasi-cardinal direction, but we don't have that here. The other issue I noticed with the actual compass, the bearing tape on top, is it doesn't give you an exact readout of what bearing you're currently looking at, so you have to kind of guess, which is a little bit annoying, right? If I'm looking at bearing 210 and I'm trying to tell my squad buddies that I see a target at 210, right? But on my HUD, it just says Well, it's weird. It's laid out like 205, and then there's like a bunch of notches, and then it's like 220. So I'd have to kind of like guess. So I'd be like, in between 205 and 220, I see a guy. Other games like Squad, for example, have it shows the bearing, it shows the cardinal directions, but it also shows the exact number you're looking at, the exact bearing marker you're looking at. So I can say 210, 211, right? So that way other people can then orient correctly and look at the exact bearing I gave them. That's something I'd personally like to see. It's a little sad that it's not in there currently. Hopefully that's coming in soon. We'll see. And yeah, definitely would like to see that added for sure. All right, so moving on to other elements. So the physicalized shopping UI has now been updated a lot more. So in the past, you would just walk up to, say, a water bottle stand or whatever, or get an energy bar, whatever it is you want, and you would hold F, you would mouse over the item, and you would either just click more info, or you would click buy, and you would just, your character would open the Mobiglas, you would confirm the purchase, and then that would be it. Or you could reach out and just grab it there with the quick buy option. Now, currently, the way it works now is there is, whenever you mouse over or just like look the center of your screen at an item on a kiosk there that's just sitting there, so like water bottles or energy bars, plushies, whatever it is, there will now be this little box that comes up and it will tell you how much the item is, what it exactly is. So basically all the same stuff you get when you click more info, when you hold F and you click more info, all the same stuff is there. It's just now in this like floating augmented reality interface. And then you could just hold B and then the UI will fill up. And then when that UI fills up, like a little progress bar, your character will buy it. It will just go into your inventory currently. Right now, it is just going into the inventory of the landing location. So that is just how it works right now. I don't know if they plan on changing that, but overall, I like it. It's a much smoother experience. It's really nice. You don't have to use the Mobiglas or anything like that. It still has some polish issues. I noticed that the AR elements were kind of clipping through objects and stuff like that. It was very awkward looking. So they need to adjust that. Sometimes it was also a little bit hard to read because the elements were a little bit too, you couldn't read them with a lighter background. But it's definitely a huge improvement. It's just really nice, really quick and easy. You just walk up to an item, hold B, and you can just buy it real quick, buy a bunch of items and stuff like that. So yeah, I really, really enjoy that. I don't know if they're taking away the ability to just grab the item off the shelf now by hand. I didn't see any ability to do that, but then again, currently right now with the builds that we played, the personal interaction system is still in the works. So it is not cool, like completely finalized yet. So it might be that we will be able to do that there with the Pi model, personal interaction system and all that. But currently right now, the physicalized shopping UI was the main way you interact. You just held B. So we'll see. We'll keep you informed on that. While we're talking about user interface elements here, let's talk about the new Mobiglas. The new layout is way better. I quite like it. So if you've ever seen the Squadron 42 stuff, it's kind of like that, though I think the Squadron 42 elements are going to be more centered around the story, whereas the Mobiglas here, if you open your Mobiglas currently in the live version of the game right now, right, it'll show you like your user, how much, like your username, how much money you have, the current atmospheric conditions, if any, and stuff like that, like just things here and there, right? It has the same elements, but there's a lot more detail, including notifications you may have missed, which is really, really nice. So in case you've missed any type of notifications, small notifications here or there, there's an actual notifications tab there you can visit. There's also your health tab, shows you your current health, all the stuff that you expect, and you can click on each individual item, including like how much money you have, all that. And each little tab, you click on it, there's like a little arrow on it, you can click on it, and it takes you to the actual app that governs that. So it's really, really nice to see. It's just overall really clean. It's really nice looking. Now, it did initially suffer from some visibility issues. It was really blurry, but then they kind of tampered down on that and they improved on it quite a bit. It still has, again, some of that shading holographic issue. So there's like this ghosting effect. Me personally, I thought it was okay. I think there's going to be people out there who are definitely going to be put off by this though, for sure. So we'll see if they continue to polish it, how that goes looking forward. We'll see. But personally, I thought it was pretty cool. I quite enjoy it. And the layout is really, really nice and intelligible. There's some things here and there that are still not updated. For example, knickknacks is still really not the greatest. It's still like the old knickknacks. It's not usable. It's just really hard to use. So I just never really found any use for it, really. The other ones in there, like Mo Trader, is still like the old style Mo Trader app where you trade coins. I really hope that they add a ledger to the Mo Trader at some point. I would really like to keep track of my transactions that I give other players and that I'm receiving from other players. So that would be really, really nice. CIG, please get on that. But overall, though, I do quite enjoy the new Mobiglas. It's really, really nice. But we have to talk about the most important new improvement to the Mobiglas, of course. And that is the new star map. Yes, finally, after years of being stuck with that old, god-awful star map, we now have the new one, and yes, it is absolutely incredible. Now, I saw some posts online around the net, like on Reddit and Spectrum and stuff like that, where people were commenting that it looked worse, or even perhaps performed worse than the old one, and those people, I can just say without a doubt, are just dumb. They have no context of anything whatsoever. They're just speaking out of their butt. This is already light years ahead of what we currently have. Now, CIG originally, I think it was Chris Roberts, said that they would like the star map to be similar to the star map that we have on the site, the ARC star map that we have on the CIG's website, the RSI site. I think this already far surpasses that tenfold, right? And the reason why is you can now go in, let's say I'm doing a mission, right? Let me just give you an example of how you can utilize this, just how easy and simple it is. Let's say I'm at Port Tressler and I need to do a mission. I take the mission and it tells me I need to go to the Glint family farms on Selen, right? If I don't know where Selen is, or I didn't even know where Glint family farms is, right? Now I have, if I'm in the old system, I have to open my star map and just search, maybe look for the actual mission marker, right? In this one, all I have to do is open the star map, and on the top left, there's a search function, type in Glint, immediately it pops up, click on that, and then immediately it'll show you the information about Glint family farms and where it's at. You could just hit set route and there, you're done. No more having to fight the star map, folks. You can just search, click on the destination you want to go, and hit set route. It is like modern sat-nav navigation. That's really it. It's that simple. You simply like anybody saying that this is going to be worse than the existing star map, I have no idea what planet you're from, buddy, but you need to go back because you have no idea what you're talking about. All right. The neat feature that is also really cool, not just beyond the navigation stuff, a neat feature that you can do with a star map is that the radar is also blended into your star map. Let me explain a little bit more here. So in the current build right now, your radar is just what you have around you. You can just see it if your ship shows it, if your ship is functional and all that, you can see all the little triangles and doodads. That's well and good, right? But with 323, not only do you have the existing radar that you're used to, the HUD and everything like that you're used to now, but you can also open your star map and you can zoom in on your ship, right? And you can see all the interior details. You can see the really cool layout of your ship. But then you zoom out just a little bit and you can see the actual radar of your ship, and you can see the radar contacts around your ship as well. It is mind-boggling. It's so cool. Like I think I was at Bajini Point, and I had opened it for the first time, and there was players also coming to Bajini Point, and I opened it and I can see them physically. They were on my star map in front of me, flying. You could see their little ships flying because they're radar contacts. And I could see them flying towards Bajini Point. I could see their names. I can click the name of the ship, and I had options. I could see what type of ship it was and whatnot. I can see the name of the pilot. I even had an option to hail directly from there too, I believe. I think I'd have to go back and try it again. I may be misremembering that, but I think I had the option to hail, but I'll have to check again. But yeah, it was really cool because it showed the view of my radar, how far my radar was going, and anything that was in there was showing up as a contact, and you could see physically the ship. Like I saw a Terrapin, and this guy was flying his Terrapin, and he was flying around, and you could see like this little model of a Terrapin flying around in the direction it was traveling. It was really, really cool. So you can see that, and then of course you can zoom out even further, and then you start to get the planetary view. You zoom out further, then you get the entire system-wide view. It's very, very intuitive. It is so, so awesome. Now, unfortunately, it's not tied to FPS radar yet. It looks like that functionality, at least currently what we played, was not finalized yet. So if you open the star map while you were on foot somewhere, it didn't show anything. At least for me, it didn't. It may be for other people. It could be hit or miss. I don't know. I just know that it didn't work in FPS, right? So it works well for ships, but not FPS currently. They need to get that sorted. So it looks like other features need to still be plugged in. But overall, though, it was really, really, really nice. I really enjoyed that. The only issues I really saw was there was some micro stuttering, some performance issues here and there. So they really need to hammer down the optimization and get that kind of squared away. There's just little things here and there. Other thing I noticed too is if you try to do the old method where you zoom out and then you try to click on a new destination, like a new planet, and then try to find like a landing spot on the planet manually without typing it in the search function, it did seem like the markers on those planets were hard to view. They were hard to see. It looked like, for example, I was on Microtech and I was trying to find some locations on Microtech, and the markers themselves were white, and we all know Microtech's white as well too, so it was very hard to see it. So yeah, they need to clean that up a bit, maybe add some more drop shadowing here and there, but overall it's still looking solid, and it is way better than what we have now. I'm really, really excited to see how much more effort they put into it going into the subsequent builds and when it eventually goes to wave 1 and then eventually to live. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this evolve more. Okay, so next I want to talk about the changes to FPS Combat, and boy, there is a lot of them. So much so that I can't cover it all here, nor did I really get to all of it within the 2-day period I had the most extensive amount of time with 3.23. So in the description box below, of course, will be the patch notes for you to check out if you want to kind of dive through and see all the individual changes. Thanks to CIG for providing really, really detailed patch notes here, because I mean, it is like a detailed breakdown, more than most games ever do. It's like down to like individual damage values and percentages and stuff like that. So I really, really appreciate that. It really makes things a lot easier to understand and digest. So big shouts out to CIG and of course Zach, who's part of that team, Zach Priest. Let's go ahead and first talk about some of the changes that I noticed most prominently. First off, shotguns are beasts in this game now, especially when hip fired with the new crosshair. They do an insane amount of damage at close range, which is typical of most video gaminess balance. Although I did have some pretty good success using them at mid-range while I was aiming down sights with them. This is because of the change for aim down sights, where it really, really severely improves the accuracy of firearms, so there's not as much dispersion, right, when you're using ADS compared to hip fire. And what I used a lot more was the Devastator, as the Devastator tends to be a bit of a joke in live, and I decided I wanted to try it, and it is an absolute beast in 3.23. It is a proper broom. I mean, with a charged shot, you will one-tap anything in its path. So, like, anything that you got, charge one shot, easily one-taps, right? Shotguns, just in general now, are strong in close quarters. And if you run into a player in close quarters who has a shotgun, you will just get flattened right away. You know, that is just, it's just insane how much damage they balanced it out. And like I said, I had some modicum of success with mid-range targets using it. Just has to be aim down sights. If you're not using aim down sights, you just won't hit them at all. Still does pretty decent damage, but the fall off is pretty severe for it. Other interesting changes I noticed. The laser pointers now have, I think it's about a statistical improvement. So it's like about 12% decreased shot spread. And now you may be wondering, that's kind of weird. So now laser pointers themselves actually have a stat boost now. And yeah, apparently they do. And according to the patch notes, they do as well too. And I noticed it as well. And you may be wondering, well, what's the point if we have a crosshair? Why would we want to use a laser? Well, I guess that's probably the reason why they want you to use the laser as a modifier to improve your hip fire. But I mean, why would you if you have a crosshair? I mean, the idea of having a laser is to kind of give you a de facto crosshair when you don't have one, right? So this leaves people scratching their heads a bit. But my guess is that for this, for one, it's not only to encourage players to use it, of course, but two, also to give non-combat players a small edge when they are engaged in combat. Remember that mostly combat-focused visors are going to give us a actual crosshair to use, but non-combat ones, for example, if you're using the Great Cat Avil armor, right, you will not have a crosshair. So if you get stuck in combat for some reason, like I don't know, a pirate show up to your mining location and you're out mining or doing something or engineering work, and you decide to pull out your piece, you're not going to have a crosshair. So what do you need? Maybe you can put a laser on it, right? And now you have not only improved hipfire accuracy, but you now also have the ability to see where your shots are going to relatively, end up going when you aim, if you try to do point shooting with your weapon, right? So you give your position away, but the trade-off is you get a little bit more accuracy. And like I said, for non-combat players, this is probably going to be really useful for them as well, too, since they won't have a built-in crosshair. Other things to note is they changed some keybinds. I wasn't a fan of some of the changes of the keybinds, but then they re-changed them again. Some of them stuck, like for example, C to crouch and control to go prone, which I'm not a fan of. It's because they're changing a bunch of new systems as well as adding new reloading mechanics and stuff like that. There's like a hotkey to repool now and stuff, but some of these new elements are requiring some rejigging of the controls, and I'm not a fan of it. I hope they change it back, but we'll see. If they keep it that way, I'm just going to rebind everything custom, which I'm not a fan of. I think the initial key bindings was fine. Like right now, currently, mouse wheel is used to switch between your weapons. It's no longer used to slow your character. Now you have to use Alt and mouse wheel. Not a fan of that, personally. I rarely switch my weapons a lot anyway. I usually prefer the number keys to do it. When I play tac shooters and stuff like that, like Ground Branch, I prefer to just stick with my primary and secondary, and if I can, switch between them necessarily, but I just use the number keys. I never use mouse wheels, so. But currently, that seems to be the way they're going. If they change that, I'm just going to change those keybinds to the previous settings. We'll see if they keep them. Either way. Another big change was that they took force reactions away from all FPS weapons, so no longer are you going to lose control of your character after you eat like a shotgun blast or a sniper shot. Explosions will still throw you around, of course, but yeah, normal weapons are no longer going to take control away from your character by knocking them to the side or knocking them on their butt or anything like that. They were fun when they first put them in, but it's definitely not like the greatest for balancing terms. Anything that takes your control from your character away is just not really that great. So I'm glad they kind of moved away from that. We'll see how it goes going forward. Of course, they still need more feedback and a lot more adjustment, so we'll see. And briefly, I talked about how aim down sights improves your accuracy. So yeah, that's another huge change. Every weapon has some level of dispersion and just kind of inaccuracy, especially when you're hip firing. But the moment you aim down sight, you ADS, that accuracy is perfect now. Only the recoil is the only thing that really will change how accurate you are. It's a little bit weird. It's weird having an LMG that just fires wildly all over the place. Even sniper rifles that fire wildly all over the place with a hip fire. But then the moment you look down the sight, all of a sudden it's just laser accurate. So it's a little weird. I think because they want the recoil to be what creates the inaccuracy rather than adding just kind of just general dispersion. But I think even just a little bit of dispersion is probably still really good because it just feels odd just how insanely accurate your character is when they're aiming down the sights. I guess maybe they really want to force people to really start to ADS more than hip fire, but then they added hip fire, the crosshairs, and then they added lasers to increase hip fire. So now they're also incentivizing you not to at the same time. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not really a full fan of having like full accuracy at ADS, but we'll see. Again, I didn't have like the longest amount of time with FPS, but in what I saw, it felt weird. It felt odd. We'll see if they adjust it more going forward. And then, of course, I have to talk about the infamous scope glint, which has got a lot of bad press recently. Even though it was only like featured briefly on an ISC, everybody just lost their minds when they saw it and just went straight to Spectrum and started just crying about it. So personally, I tested it. It was all right. I had no issues with it. I mean, I played games with glint in them and it felt much the same. The main difference compared to how Star Citizen is doing it compared to other games is that the glint view for it is actually really, really small compared to other games. Other games have a very wide angle for where you can see scope glint. In this one, like the player that's aiming at you is pretty much what you're only going to see. Like if that player's not aiming at anybody else, like he's sniping at other players, you're just not going to see the glint. It's almost entirely really just has to do with that player has just got you in their view. Then you're probably going to see that glint, right? And yes, it does happen at night too. It's very bright. It's very strange. It's very weird. It's not very realistic, of course. I'm a person who plays a lot of tac shooters. Personally, I prefer realism, but I don't care when it comes necessarily for Star Citizen. I would like them to go more towards the milsim aspect, but they're not going to. It's obvious they planted their flag more in the half arcade, half milsim kind of arena, kind of in between kind of thing. They want to have their cake and eat it too. So I'm pretty agnostic about it as it is now personally. I don't have enough time with it, but in what I did see and what I played with, it's all right. It seems okay. Now, I'm not the right person to ask anyway because I'm not a sniper. I prefer CQB. If I see glint, I just grab cover. I know it could probably be annoying for a sniper to have your position given away so easily like that, but again, personally, I just don't care because I'm not a sniper. I find sniping in any game to just be boring, in just any game, even tac shooters that I play a lot. I just don't find sniping to be fun, and it's not really team-oriented. Unless you're playing a milsim, then it's different because then a sniper as part of a milsim group can actually function as a scout. And scouting is important, which you can do in Star Citizen as well, but anybody can be a scout without a sniper rifle. You can just hold F and mouse wheel up to zoom in, and it has the same effect and has no glint, and you can still get the same data that you need. You can also go into third person and zoom in with third person that has the same effect too. Actually, it's a lot better than using a sniper because it's like having a drone. So that argument doesn't really hold water for a lot of people who were saying the same thing about that as well too. So again, like I said, I'm agnostic. I think we need more data though. Right now it's just in the Evocati test. There's only so much data we have. I mean, they've expanded the roster of Evocati quite a bit, but at the end of the day, it still needs more players. So I think when we get to wave 1, wave 2, and we open the floodgates a little bit more, we'll probably see a lot more feedback coming in from a lot of more different people with different walks of life trying it out. We'll see. Me personally, though, don't really care. I think it's fine. It didn't bother me at all whatsoever. Even when I tried it to do sniping, I didn't really find it to do much different. I didn't change my tactics at all. It just felt the same. But again, I didn't have it for much time, so we'll see. That being said, Zach Priest did say that they were looking into the idea of having binoculars in the future for those of you that don't want scope glint but still want to have a zoom function. And my guess is this is going to be like a visor or helmet feature in the future. So, I mean, you can zoom in without a glint that way too. But like I said, you could do it in third person. Works that way too. So why use a sniper rifle to scout when you could just use third person and zoom in with it? I mean, I don't know. That's just me though. All right, that's the extent of my feedback. There's a lot more changes. There's so many more balance improvements, just so many things that changed. Like for example, I think in the current live build, bullets can, I think, hit multiple parts of the body at once. So I think it can like hit your arm and hit your chest. I think now they have changed it so that way, like for example, if you're aiming and you get hit, it hits your arm. It no longer goes through your arm and hits your chest. It only just stops at hitting your arm, which is a huge balance improvement there. Because it does also lower the time to kill. It also lowers the amount of like damage individual shots do. So you have to, it just overall changes like the combat play. I know some people probably don't like that. But personally, from what I saw, it does make the experience feel a little bit more consistent. That's the best way I can describe it. When you're in an actual combat scenario, it does feel a lot more consistent than it was before. Because other things they fixed too is like your backpacks and your guns no longer eat bullets either too. Any equipment on you, backpacks, they used to just eat the bullets for you, so you would just shoot at somebody, they would just never die, especially if they had a backpack on. That's been adjusted as well too. So nice things here and there. But yeah, overall, I think it's going good. It's just going to need a lot more feedback and a lot more time in the saddle with it. And I've only had about 2 days with it, so we'll see. But there was other improvements, of course, reloading improvements. So we've been seeing about mag pulling or mag repacking and stuff like that for a long time, years and years. And now it is finally in our hands. And it's pretty interesting. It's a new feature coming in. So we have the backpack reloading and the ammo repulling. So if you run out of usable magazines equipped on your armor, your next reload will be a backpack reload. And this, of course, will take longer to reload, but it will keep you in the action a lot longer, and it will save you in a pinch. And of course, you have ammo repulling, which is also known as mag repacking. And that can be done anytime, so long as you have some partially expended mags on you. Now, me personally, the repacking of magazines is just a little too fast, right? I would never use this still in a combat scenario, since you should never repack your mags in a combat area. You should be doing this out of combat. Regardless, the speed at which you do it, you could just get behind cover and just do it real quick, and it's a relatively fast process depending on how many mags you need to repack. But I still think the speed is just too fast. In Squadron 42, that probably works well because you're the hero of the story, so you being able to like repack your magazines really fast is probably a cool feature. It just makes you feel a little bit more heroic. But I don't think it works well in a multiplayer environment against, say, other players, for example. It feels way too arcadey. The fact that your character can just repack magazines like so insanely fast, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think they could probably deal with slowing that down a little bit. That would probably make it a lot more better. So that way you are incentivized to use that out of combat, or if you're in a situation where you do need to repack, but you're in a firefight for whatever reason, you just pull out of the fight. You just back out. You're no longer combat effective at that point. You should get out of the area, repack, get yourself back up, and then come back into the fray once more, right? Then you have the backpack reload, which is actually really neat. If you're in a pinch and you run out of mags equipped on you, they're all empty, and you still have mags in your backpack, of course, your character will just go into their backpack. It takes longer. They'll pull out a mag, reload, but you still don't have any mags on you, so you're going to have another backpack reload. At this point, if you're in this type of situation here, you should then, probably disengage from the combat area, find some cover, and put new mags on your character, onto your character's armor, vest, whatever it is you have. So that way you can actually get back into the fight and reload effectively without having to do backpack reloads. That's probably the best way to handle this. It's there, though, as a nice feature if you have to use it in a pinch, but I would never rely on backpack reloads. They just take too long, and it's just going to get you killed. But it's still cool to see. It's still an option. It's available to you, and it can help you, like I said, in a pinch. But if you run into this problem, you're running into backpack reloads, you probably should take cover and disengage from the combat area. And then use that time to load up new mags, and then jump back into the fight. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to FPS is the loot screen. I really like the brand new loot screen. It can be confusing initially once you open it up, but once you take a good look at it, it's easy to kind of get what it's trying to convey. So you have red boxes at the top that show the loot of the body or the container that you're picking through, and on the bottom is your own equipment. You can shift click on items in the loot container or your own equipment to put them either into your armor or your pack. You can also select by simply left clicking on a lootable item just to equip it. And you can also right click on an item to just drop it. They added the ability to swap armor by clicking this tiny little arrow on the right side of your actual screen there, your interface, which in my opinion is a little bit too tiny and just kind of out of the way and hard. It's just like easy to overlook. So if you're a person that likes to do, say, bunker runs, maybe knocking out AI and taking their equipment or whatever like that, just remember that the arrow, there's like a tiny little arrow on the right side. They may change this by the time it gets into your hands, but currently right now it's this tiny little arrow on the right side. It's very easy to overlook, but you click that and it switches to the armor menu, and then you can switch your armors that way. I would like to see that be improved a little bit more there, but either way, this new loot menu, very, very nice. It's super simple and easy just to walk up to a dead NPC or player and just quickly ewing some ammo or pens or other important items just super fast and then move on. If you because right now currently if you want to pick say a med pen off of a dead AI or something like that, right, you can either go into the loot menu, click on it and drag it onto your character, or you can hold F and try to fight the menu trying to find the pen on the character and clicking equip. You can do that still kind of to some degree right now currently in 3.23, but it's just much easier to do the loot menu. It's just way quicker, just way faster. It's just way simpler. Definitely a huge improvement, I can say for sure. This is really, really nice to see. And then also I want to talk about the brand new EVA mechanics that are coming into this patch as well. And they're awesome. They're phenomenal. I absolutely love it. And it makes me wish we had more content surrounding EVA in the future. We used to have a lot of missions where you had to dig through like derelict spaceships that were above like moons and whatnot. And those have largely been taken away from the game now, and they've kind of moved those towards planetside. I do hope they decide to bring those back at some point and make them a little bit more prominent than what we are used to now, because EVAing is so much more fun with the new EVA mechanics. It's relatively straightforward, right? So let's say you're in the back of like a Cutlass and you just want to jump out into EVA. You literally just walk and the transition is completely seamless. As soon as you step off the grid and you're into space, you assume a Superman pose and you're just kind of in this prone position and you just fly around that way. And it's decoupled by default now. So by decoupled, if you're not already aware, that just means that you continue in the direction of travel when you let go of your inputs, and you'll just continue that way forever until you decide to, put another input in. So you can use this to kind of decouple fly in EVA, and it's really, really nice. And then of course, if you need to stop yourself because of course, there's no kind of like coupled mode as far as I can tell. I don't know if they're going to add one, but by default, it is just decoupled. But if they decide to add it in, that'd be cool, but I don't think they're going to. And if you do need to stop yourself because you're constantly floating in one direction and you don't have a way of stopping, you just hold the space brake key, which is the same as your ship, which is by default X, and that will stop your momentum, which is really nice. When you're in EVA, looking around is so smooth and natural since your character just pivots around their view and you can just look around and you can see everything, including your body. And then the moment you change direction, your character will automatically assume the correct pose to change the direction needed for travel. And this new prone feature that you see in EVA is also translated to FPS, like on the ground as well too. So prone has that same feature as well. So when you're prone on the ground, and if you decide you just want to look around, your character will naturally look around behind them, right? If you've played Helldivers and you've been prone on the ground and you look around when you're prone, it's the same exact thing. It's the same idea, right? Which makes me wish, hey CIG, like with the popularity of Helldivers, can we get like a dive? I would really love to have a dive now. They're going to give us a, kind of a baseball slide, right? Where you kind of tuck your leg in and you slide into cover or whatever. Give us a dive as well too. I would love to have that as like a feature. Like give us a Helldivers dive to go with this new prone. But yeah, so back to EVA. So it's just really fluid. It's seamless. And then when you transition into a physics grade, there's just no issues whatsoever. It is just completely seamless. It's so awesome. And there's just these little details that I really love. For example, if you're traveling towards, say, a ship in EVA and you're moving kind of decently fast, your character will actually put their hand out as they're approaching the ship as if to brace the impact that's coming in. It's really cool. And that's, of course, going to tie into the push and pull mechanics in the future, because right now, currently in 3.23, we have unlimited EVA fuel. But going in the future, we will have limited EVA fuel, and we will have to use the push and pull mechanic. So we'll have to push and pull ourselves along the side of a spaceship, or if we're inside a spaceship and there's no gravity, we would have to push and pull ourselves through like the hallways and stuff. We'll have to grab individual sections and pull ourselves along, right? And of course, we'll have to stop ourselves. So our character putting our hand out is part of that as well. And it's just really cool to see where your character has like a gun in their right hand and they're floating, and then they put their left hand out to brace themselves on part of a ship as they're coming in. It just looks really, really cool. It's very cinematic. I really like it. And then, of course, I tried to break it. I tried to make myself ragdoll and try to get janky with it, and I couldn't break it. So I tried to go upside down into a physics grid and try to get myself to go ragdoll. I couldn't do it. What happens is if your character's upside down, they hit the physics grid, and then they will flip rapidly back upright, like super fast. It's kind of janky almost. It's a little weird. It's almost a little too fast for my liking, and I think maybe some people who are a little bit more probably susceptible to motion sickness might get a little bit queasy by that. But ultimately, though, it's still really cool to see that it's hard to ragdoll your character. Personally, I wouldn't mind if I went upside down into a physics grid and I just went ragdoll at that moment. That's like a weird like situation there, because we're used to doing that now in live. If you're used to playing with the EVA now in live and you're so frustrated with yourself getting like knocked prone, it's because you're not perfectly in an upright position. So if you come in at an angle or you come in like facing down, like your feet are not aligned with the physics grid properly, your character will ragdoll automatically. And in this one, it doesn't happen. What happens is your character will just automatically rotate accordingly. I don't mind if that's a little bit eased up on, because just the rotation going from like upside down to a fully upright is just really jarring. Like it's so fast and jarring and very unrealistic looking. So I think I wouldn't mind if you were fully upside down that you just ragdolled at that point. They could definitely like dial that back a little bit. So maybe if you're sideways, it rotates you, but if you're upside down, I think it's a little too much. They could definitely fix that a little bit. But, I mean, it's great. Overall, I'm a big fan. I'm enjoying it. I think that it is going to be really strong going forward, building up new EVA content for the future. And then with push and pull, we're going to have a lot more as well, too. So I'm looking forward to seeing much more being added to it. But yeah, it's definitely a huge improvement. I can't wait to see more. The other thing I wanted to talk about, of course, is server crash recovery. So that's a huge, huge bonus coming into 3.23, which is the ability for servers to no longer 30K necessarily, no longer kick you back to menu, but now if a server crashes, it's going to attempt to recover. And I think this is going to be one of the better features that is going to improve quality of life going forward, simply because it's so annoying that you have to get kicked back to menu when the server just stops responding, and then you have to jump back in, start reclaiming your ships, or pull your ships back up again. It's just, it's annoying, but the problem is it's also been one of the big major issues currently with 3.23, and the reason why is if there's an issue with a certain location or something just in general causes a server to just crash, like it causes, like, I don't know, a DGS corruption or something like that, then what happens is the server will crash. It will attempt to recover, which is not a short amount of time, mind you. It will attempt to recover, and then once it recovers, it'll behave for a little bit, but you can see the server struggling because for whatever reason, whatever was causing the crash is still there. It just got recovered and put back in, and then the server will crash again. And then so you have these death cycles for these servers where they just constantly boot looping over and over and over and over again. And I mean, that's great for, I guess, helping CIG narrow down what's causing crashes, but it also means that if you are in a server that's in a death spiral, if you try to back out, you can't change servers anymore. So you are getting constantly put back into that same server over and over and over again. And then you're just constantly locked to that server. And the only way you can work around that is to basically jump into another friend's who, like a person on your friends list who's in a different server. That's the only way to get away from the death spiral. So they need to fix that. That's been one of the major blockers they've had. And the CIG really needs to get a handle on that to help make the overall experience a lot better. I mean, I have issues with how long the recovery is taking, but again, I think the length of the recovery has to do with the fact that currently right now the servers are going to still be governing an entire system. When we get more of server meshing online, where individuals servers are governing smaller areas, I think the recovery times are going to be a lot smaller because we're no longer recovering millions, if not billions, of entities. We're now just going to be recovering whatever is just in the general area. But yeah, those are still the major concerns I have for 3.23. On that note, with server performance, don't expect the server performance to be any better than what you're seeing in live now, because again, we don't have server meshing. Server meshing is needed to improve that way beyond what we have now. Currently, like when we play, I'm still seeing, very low server FPS. I'm still seeing AI jankiness and stuff. All the stuff you're used to seeing, it's still there. Until we get server meshing in, though, it's just something we're gonna have to deal with. So while this patch is really good, it's still a letdown that the FPS for the servers, just generally the tick rates for servers, are just gonna still be pretty abysmal for the most part. Okay, so a couple things I want to talk about here and there. So Master Modes is not quite finalized for 3.23, but we still have it currently in the builds, and what I played was actually pretty awesome. Again, it's not finalized. There's still glitches and bugs. Some of the ships that I've flown were not even functional really, and there were some UI issues, but it's still looking great. I tested several ships, including ships that generally perform pretty poorly in live, for example, like the Cont, and I'm actually pretty impressed with its maneuverability despite its size. One worry that I had was that the ship size would make it even worse with the slower speeds, because being that it's a big ship, it's just easy to hit. And with the slower speeds Master Modes brings, the Cont would just be a joke overall and just be far worse. But with the improvements to the accelerations and side strafe capabilities the Cont has, thanks to its gimbaling main engines, it's a really strong zoom and boom zoom fighter. And yeah, I'm very impressed with it. I want to see what they're going to do with it more, and hopefully they'll ask for additional feedback, because right now currently they're not asking for any, but when they do, I definitely want to get in and start pew-pewing a lot more with it. But that being said, I did sneak in a little bit more extra tests. For example, I tested the Fury LX, because it's one of my favorite ships for watching takeoff and landings, of course. And the thing is, that thing is on rails, especially when boosting. For one, its boost is almost basically endless. Its side strafes are insanely fast. I think I was pulling like 20 G side strafes, and the jerk profile it, and it's just insane. Which makes sense because, well, it doesn't have nav modes because it lacks a quantum drive. So as a trade-off, it gets endless boost and has the best maneuverability of any ship in game. I can begin to describe how insane this thing is. It is so fast and how much it strafes side to side and how quick it is. So yeah, it just has an endless pool of boost, and it's just really fast and super zippy and maneuverable. And that's the trade-off for just having no quantum drive. Now, here's the big one though. Another ship I tested was the old reliable, the Gladius, because this is the gold standard CIG goes by, right? And one of the things is I already knew how she flies. I played a lot with Master Modes. I've flown the Gladius a lot, but I wanted to see if they added anything, so they snuck anything in there, and they did. And more specifically, the audio team. And my God, does the Gladius sound incredible. She handles well, like I said, as you expect if you played Master Mode in live with the experimental mode, but the sounds, my God, the sounds. Okay, we heard the sounds that you heard in Squadron 42. And it's completely different from the one that we're currently seeing in 323. And I'm wondering if it's because maybe we have like a civilian Gladius versus like the military Gladius from Squadron 42. Because remember, they're supposed to technically be different ships. One is a military version, one is supposed to be a civilian version. And for, I guess, the version that we have now, it's hard to describe, but it kind of is taking cues from the new Anvil Mark II, right? So it has like this kind of cross of a sound of like an X-Wing, right? And maybe actual thrusters from a real rocket, not the like ripping sounds that you're used to hearing from rockets taking off as they're like blasting through the atmosphere and you can hear the thrusters. No, I'm talking more like smaller, like gas operated thrusters, right? They actually sound like they're expelling gases at higher speeds. So it's more like, you know, nozzles gassing out, and it sounds really good along with this kind of like X-Wing sci-fi like engine tones. It's really, really cool. But what really got me really like invested is how it's like portrayed. It's very intimate in the cockpit, right? We're used to kind of like how the Gladius sounds now. It sounds very clear. It's very easy to identify, right? But in this new build, the Gladius, it feels more intimate in the cockpit. Like the sounds are actually reverberating through the ship. So I think they have some of the early elements of having the actual no audio sim being plugged into the game currently, at least for the Gladius right now. And it sounds awesome. So it also has kind of more finalized audio for its nav mode. So when you engage nav mode, you hit B to turn on to switch from SCM to nav mode. It has this really like chunky, like mechanical audio sound behind you, as you can hear the quantum drive like moving and doing stuff. So it's like, it's just really cool. It's just like, it sounds awesome as it's like building up. And then once you have nav mode engaged and you have your limiter unlocked and you just hit boost right after nav mode finishes charging up, you hit the boost, the bass from the engines on that thing just hits you straight in the chest. So now you are hurtling at Mach stupid. The screen is vibrating, shaking everywhere. The bass is hitting you hard. It is such a visceral experience. I love it. This is exactly how I pictured audio in Star Citizen to sound. Because like this is why I did the Tail Gunner stuff, for those of you that have watched the no audio sim stuff of my audio, because I like more visceral, grounded audio, right? And taking away the space simulation stuff and all that kind of grounds it and makes it feel a little bit more tangible, more visceral, more in your face when it actually happens. And like I'm telling you, when you switch into nav mode and then you boost with your limiter unlocked, like there's just no other feeling. It just sounds so powerful. I love it. It's like, if I was working at CAG, that's exactly how I would have designed it. I would have made it just so much more bassy and just sounds like a wild animal underneath you. It's so great. I love it. And I mean, yeah, it's one of the things that like I've been excited for, and I was really hoping to see like what they would do with it, and like seeing if like they were going to continue on with like the Squadron 42 sounds or whatever, which I thought were pretty cool. But overall, the ones that they put in here compared to the Squadron 42, I like them a lot better, just because they're way more bassier. They just have a lot more low mid-range elements there. And then it just hits you right in the chest. And even better is when you disengage nav mode and you engage the retro thrusters. The retros are so like the spatialization for the retros are so nice, because of course the retros are on your left and right side of your ship in your cockpit. So when you disengage nav mode and you hear the chunky quantum drive spool down, like, you know, and it's turning off. Nav mode is now disengaging and going into SCM mode. The retros engage to slow you down, and it is just this sheer bass on your left and right channels, just like it's just, I love it. I wish I could show you guys so you could hear it, but you're gonna have to wait until it goes wave 1. I'm telling you, it sounds incredible, and I cannot wait for them to pass this treatment onto other ships. Some ships kind of got a little bit of like that intimate feeling, so I think they're doing some convolution reverb to kind of pipe in some of the sounds there, but they're not all fully changed into the same kind of like new audio pattern that they're building for like the Gladius here, because of course the Gladius is the gold standard ship. But yeah, it's still really cool. The only thing that really took me out of it though, of course, is like the sounds of the engines are so beefy. So like, you know, you're in nav mode, you're boosting towards the target area, you see the enemy ships in front of you, you're coming in hot, you disengage, you hear that chunky drive spool down, the retros are firing, everything's you feel you're just on this like angry Pegasus from hell as you're charging into battle, and then you pull the trigger on your guns and you get that same pathetic pew pew we're used to in live currently, where it's just like it's like immersion broken. So yeah, they still haven't applied this to like the ship weapons. It seems they're not quite there yet. I really would like to see the ship weapons just feel more powerful, because currently right now they feel like spitballs. They still need work, in my opinion, personally. But yeah, I love the new sounds. They're really great. And on the topic of finishing up this with master modes, the new Quantum UI is quite interesting. It's kind of the similar stuff that we're used to, but right now the UI probably could use some work. It puts like the markers in like this weird like racetrack elliptical like in the center of your screen, which makes your screen a little bit too cluttered for my liking. So yeah, but overall the markers are still a lot more easier to identify, and as you're sweeping your screen over trying to find the markers, they have these cool little animations as they pop in. It's really nice. Really, really clean, but could use some feedback and adjustment, could use some cleanup there overall. Other things I want to talk about was the animals. Me personally, the amount of hours I played 323 from Friday to Saturday especially, I didn't see any animals whatsoever. I think I found one technically. I went out looking for one, and I went to one spot. It was super dark, and I didn't turn my light on. I heard the sound of growling, and I tried looking around. I wasn't paying attention at the time, and I think it bit me in the butt. Something bit me in the butt. I started bleeding, and then immediately stuff stopped working. I tried turning my light on to see what was around me, and I couldn't see anything. And then the server was already dying at that point, and the server just killed itself. And it was already late at night, so I just quit. That was literally the only time I didn't even see it. It just bit me in the butt. That was it. And I think it was one of the Copians or whatever it's called. But I didn't see any of the new birds. I didn't see any cows or anything like that. I didn't get a good look at any of the Copians, right? And I tried spending hours looking for them. I went to different POIs, different areas. We even went out to the wild. I didn't find anything else. I just didn't have any luck. Yeah. That's all I have to say about the animals, unfortunately. Yeah, didn't see much else other than that. So I'm going to try to look for them more in subsequent builds. But yeah, we'll see. God, the runtime on this video. Yeah, folks, like I'm telling you, 323 is just massive. And we still haven't talked about other stuff that hasn't been finalized yet. Like the personal interaction system is still in its very atrophied state currently in our current builds. They're not asking for feedback, but it's going to get fleshed out a lot more. Freight elevators are going to be put in later. Hauling missions apparently are being put in later. Reputation-based hostility. And there's still so much more to talk about. Overall, this is massive. This is huge and drastically is going to change the game going forward, and only for the better. And it's just going to continue to get better as the year goes on. And it really shows how the extra manpower from those teams that were moved from Squadron 42 over the Persistent Universe really makes a huge difference compared to the content that we were receiving in prior patches. And it's absolutely wild. Now, currently, my concerns are still with server performance, and even though these improvements are great, still expect the same level of server issues with low FPS servers. The recovery will be a nice quality of life improvement, but still everything hinges on much smoother tick rates, which hopefully will be largely addressed with server meshing. But beyond that, oh my god, I am so excited for this patch, and I'm saying right now, like I'm not usually one to try to hype things up. I usually just try to tell it like it is, and you guys all who've watched my recent patch walkthroughs and stuff in the past, you all know I just kind of try to walk through what individual patches do, warts and all, right? And I'm telling you right now, warts and all, it's looking solid, and I cannot wait for this to go wave 1, so I'm not bound by an NDA, so I can really show you some of the really cool stuff coming in this patch, because it is just so wicked, and I can't wait to see what CIG is doing more with this down the line. And it just already makes me excited for a subsequent patch after this. I just want to see what else we're going to be getting. Like, it's so fun. I cannot wait. Right. I got to contain my excitement and actually close out this video because it's already running up to an hour already looking at my timeline here as I'm recording this. All right. So, folks, if you did indeed enjoy my deep dive kind of impressions on 323, please leave a like, as it really does help out the channel. And of course, if you want to see more videos like this and much more down the line, be sure to subscribe as well. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond and support the content that I put out here, you can also become a channel member by hitting that join button down below. Speaking of which, we have our first channel member. I do want to shout out Nikki's90. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and being the very, very first supporter here at Hybrid V Audio. But all right, folks, stay tuned if you want to see more 323 coverage going forward, especially when it goes into a wider PTU. But until next time, fly safe, and I'll see you all in the black.